Do you like pirates? I like pirates. And these are... What's up, Internet Adventurers? Welcome to the very first episode of Cool Pirates That I Like. Since this is the first episode, I figured I would take us through like a broad pirate overview. Like, what is a pirate?
What is it?
What were their daily lives like? The pirate code. I also want to share some of the gnarly punishments and torture methods that they came up with, because they're on a boat and they got lots of time to think of crazy shit like that. And at the very end, I want to debunk a few pirate myths. People believe in anything about pirates. Did they really talk like this guy? So hoist the sails, raise the Jolly Roger, let's talk pirates. So, what is a pirate? When you think of the word pirate, you probably think of something like this. A Hollywood portrayal of pirates is from the golden age of piracy, between the years 1650 and like 1730. So, not very long, about 80 years. But pirates have existed for thousands of years. In Egypt and Mesopotamia and the ancient Mediterranean, there are records of the Sea People, a race of people who would come in from the Mediterranean Sea and just fuck shit up. And no one knows who they were, for sure. We don't know for sure. And in modern times, real pirates can still be found in places like Somalia, the Philippines, and Indonesia. In this series, I mostly want to talk about the golden age of piracy. You know, the swashbuckly, rum-soaked, cool pirates that we think of. You know, your Blackbeard, Black Bart, Black Sam. They had a favorite color. And Captain Morgan. Sorry, Admiral Henry Morgan. But why are we fascinated with these pirates of the Golden Age? It could be because they're roguish, they're scoundrels, they represent a freedom of societal norms. Yeah, they had a certain mystique. They were the punk rockers of the sea, and not to mention the human desire for adventure and exploration. Seeing the world. Not to mention pirates had a stupid good PR campaign. Despite the golden age of piracy only being about 80 years long, they still to this day capture the imagination of writers and artists and little kids throughout the world. Most pirates only had a career of about 2 years, so they really had to make the most of like how people saw them. Pirate responsibly. Alright, so what is the difference between a pirate and a privateer? Well, not a whole lot, really. Privateers were essentially pirates who had a letter of marque from whatever government they served, so like the English king. And that gave them pretty much carte blanche to go rob any Spanish vessels they wanted. But most of them kind of took liberties. There wasn't really anyone to tell on you in the middle of the ocean, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes wars would end and people would go on privateering anyway, which was illegal at that point, and thus just became pirates. Although in all the pictures of like privateers, they all look really fancy and they have like their coats and the wigs on, so maybe they had like a little more propriety than like regular pirates who, at the end of the day, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, calls itself a mallard. They're pretty much the same. Was there such a thing as the pirate code? There was. Sort of. Any pirate crew you joined had its own code of conduct, its own code of behavior. The most well-known being written by Black Bart, or Bartholomew Roberts. We're going to talk about him in a later episode. A lot of the rules had to do with pay distribution, because pirates, unlike merchant sailors or navy sailors, were paid quite well. Every pirate got one share of the entire treasure, and the captain often got 2 shares, and the quartermaster would get around 1.5. As well as any other officers, like a ship surgeon. Surgeons are very important when you can have a leg blown off. And if you get a leg blown off, you get up to 800 pieces of 8. So pirates had benefits. They would pay you out if you lost an arm, if you lost an eye, an ear. Grievous bodily injury was covered. It also gave pirates the right to vote in affairs of the day.
Vote or die, motherfucker!
Like which port they were going to sail to, which ship they were going to target. Because they didn't just target any ship. I'll go into that later. They also had the right to vote on their captain and their officers. if a captain wasn't doing right by his crew, they had the right to depose him and vote in a new captain. So pirate captains had to be very careful. You couldn't make the whole crew mad at you, because then they'll mutiny. So a good captain wouldn't be reckless, and he would take his crew's advice into account. The only time captains wielded absolute authority was during a fight, because someone needs to give orders in the heat of a moment.
What are you doing?
No, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Captain gives orders on ship.
Another important point was that musicians got the day off on Sunday, because if you play an instrument on a pirate ship, you can be damn sure that you're playing that thing every day. You're going to be a master when you get back to port, because there's not a lot to do on a pirate ship. So some of the other rules in the code concerned gambling and fighting. You don't want the crew to tear themselves apart. Generally, every pirate ship you would get on had a code. It was like the contract you sign when you get a new job. So, you've decided to join a pirate crew. Who can you expect to meet? Everyone! Pirate crews could not afford to be picky. They mostly consisted of former soldiers, runaways, retired naval officers, captured merchants, and freed slaves. In fact, 30% of pirate crews were made up of liberated slaves. Because when you're given the choice between slavery, the drink, or piracy, the choice seems pretty obvious. But oftentimes these men weren't coerced. They saw piracy as a liberation, as freedom. Here they can be their own person, they can make their own money, and they were welcome there. They were seen as people, not as property. Also, a lot of the times when a pirate ship would capture a vessel, the crew was given the option to join the pirate crew, and a lot of them would take it. Because if you were on a merchant vessel, it was often fully loaded and understaffed. So you were working really long days for almost no money, and when you get to port, you would spend what very little you had in less than 2 or 3 days, and then you'd be back on the boat doing it all again. Kinda sounds familiar, doesn't it? Working for merchants was like working for a corporation. And then working for the military was very strict and very regimented, and you had to go where your captain or your admiral or your king told you to go. So a life of piracy was very appealing to a lot of people. And when the war between England and Spain ended, a lot of sailors found themselves without work. So off to the high seas for a life of swashbuckling adventure, daring sea fights, and swarthy maidens, right? Well, not exactly. Let me introduce you to your new best friend, and it's not Mr. Mop and Mrs. Bucket.
Say hello to Mr. Mop and Mrs. Bucket.
It is this, a holy stone. Yeah, it's a rock, usually made out of like sandstone or something porous like that, and you would take this rock, this is a book, pretend it's a rock, and you would grab it and you would scrub the deck with it. Because if you live in Toronto and you go outside in the winter, you know salt fucks up everything. So a lot of your time on a pirate ship was spent cleaning the boards, stem to stern. Everything needed to be cleaned down on a very regular basis. Because when your boat is the only thing between you and 10,000 leagues of crushing black darkness and some of the strangest motherfuckers on Earth, you want to keep that thing in ship shape.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
You also wanted to keep all your weapons clean. They had to be ready to go at a moment's notice. A moment sometimes being hours and hours when you see a ship way off in the distance. But still, keep your shit clean. On the flip side, pirates themselves were not very clean. There's no way to shower on a boat. Unless you literally do the meme of standing screaming into the rain, which they did. But sometimes the stench would get so bad that pirates would wear perfumed handkerchiefs around their face to hold over their noses during crew meetings. One captured ship captain even said that he surrendered because he could smell the ship coming from a mile away, which is probably hyperbole, but I choose to believe it. So, where do you do your business on a pirate ship? Just like over the side? Pretty much, yeah. At the front of the ship, there was a thing called the hole, and it was basically what it sounds like. It was a hole that dropped out into into the ocean. So I guess on a rough day, it kind of works like a bidet as well. Oh, that would feel so weird. Putting yourself at risk of fish bites. Now, the one upside to working on a merchant vessel would have been you would have more space to sleep in. Pirate vessels, not so much. They were often smaller ships with much larger crews, and they would cram you in there like sardines. Basically, they'd string up a bunch of hammocks, and that's where you were sleeping. The captain might have his own quarters, but he didn't always. Sometimes they would rip out the insides of the ship to make room for more sleeping quarters, more storage space, and to make the ship a little lighter. So, not ideal. And if you've ever gone camping and used a hammock as a tent, that can mess up your back real bad. So I can't imagine being on a boat for months and months and months. Every pirate had scoliosis, I bet. All right, you're working on your pirate ship, you're hungry. What are you eating? Probably a lot of this. This is hardtack. It's like a biscuit made of wheat and water and salt, and that's about it. It's baked really hard, really dry, often called molar breakers. So pirates, you would have to dip it in water or soak it to make it even edible. They would put it on the table and they would smash it just to like get a little piece, and then they would put the piece in their mouth and they would drink water or rum and they would let it soak and have to eat it like that. The same thing went with salted meats. You didn't bite salted meat, you chewed on it for hours. So all this hard, dry food probably gets you pretty thirsty, right? Well, what are you gonna drink? You've probably heard of grog before. I don't know what picture I'm gonna use here. Grog was a mixture of water, rum, and if it's available, lime or some other fruit. The rum would kill the bacteria in the water, and the fruit would add vital vitamin C, which you need at sea to prevent scurvy, because scurvy sucks. I know we all like the idea of a pirate walking around drinking rum straight out of the bottle, getting all shit-faced, but oftentimes rum was really well rationed. When you're out at sea, you can't just go ham every night. Also, then no one would get any work done. They'd be hungover every day. Pirates were often given a ration of rum a day, usually a few ounces, like a cup or so, which they would then water down into grog. I guess if you just drank it all at once, you would get like shit-faced, but that was not encouraged. Lights were out at 8 o'clock, and if you wanted to keep drinking after 8, you had to do it on deck in the dark. So, may as well just go to bed, right? Now, if you've been in a crew for a while, maybe you got a buddy who you're getting kind of close with. Pirates had a thing called matelage, and it was basically marriage. You would share all your treasure takes. When one of you would die, the other one would get his share of the treasure afterwards, kind of like life insurance. And these two guys would share everything: food, gold, intimate partners. Sometimes they were intimate with each other. See, pirates liked everybody. All right, you've joined your pirate crew. You've spent weeks scrubbing the deck, making everything nice and clean. Your sword, your guns, they're all good. You hear a yell from the crow's nest. A ship's been spotted. Now what? Well, this was no accident. The idea that pirates just like sailed the ocean looking for random targets is ridiculous, because the ocean is fucking massive. So what pirates usually did is they would gather intelligence. They would ask around at ports, and they would learn the trade routes and the scheduling of certain merchants and certain shipping companies. Sometimes they would get that information from other merchants. So you finally caught up to your prey. So this merchant ship, it's big, it's heavy, it's slow. Pirate ships, on the other hand, I know we like the idea of a great big pirate ship with 40 guns and stuff like that. Pirate ships were often much smaller and faster, like a sloop or a brigantine, and usually pimped out. They had shallower keels, they might have an extra sail, they might have extra guns. Like I said, they ripped out the innards to make it go faster. Pirate ships were made to get in fast and get out fast. So you start by sailing under a false flag. You see who you're sailing up on, you raise a flag that's friendly to them. So you would use this Trojan horse idea to get close to, and just as you're getting in close, they hoist the Jolly Roger. They hoist the flag.
Gotcha, bitch!
And that's when you come out screaming, yelling, banging on stuff. singing, making all the noise in the world, stinking, and if you're lucky, the merchant just surrenders because it's not worth the fight. It's not worth his crew's lives. Most people just surrendered out of fear. So, okay, good, that's the end, right? Well, what if they don't surrender? That's when it gets insane. You fire a warning shot across the bow. So they still don't surrender? That's when shit can get real. Usually, as pirates were sailing up, instead of firing regular cannonballs, which could damage the structure of the ship they were trying to capture, or the prizes within, they would fire things like grape shot, which would rip through rigging and people. But generally, pirate ships were faster and more maneuverable, and they would want to get up. Hold on, give me a sec. Okay, so you got your honking big merchant ship right here, and it's going real slow. And you're coming up behind it, and you raise the false flag, and they're like, oh shit, what do we do? What do we do? How do we get away? And they can't. And you pull up to the side, and then you throw the grappling hooks over. These are in my bathroom. I have a pirate-themed bathroom. That's right, be jealous. I'm not a ship expert. I don't pretend to know a lot about naval battles or sea tactics, but I know the point was to get up close, real quick, and then board. So boarding, what was that like? Basically, you'd get up alongside the other ship, you would throw ropes, grappling hooks over, they would throw boarding planks over with big long boards that you would run across. And that's when shit hit the fan. So what were you running into battle with? Well, your primary weapon is probably your cutlass. This one's made of foam. They were short, they were wider than normal military swords. So they could hack and chop and not get caught up in the rigging. Because then you're dead. I know this is very aesthetic and Captain Hook had something like this, but oftentimes you wanted something a little shorter. Still fun though. Other things you might have on your person is a boarding axe. Small little axe good for chopping ropes and faces. Sometimes pirates would just have a club and they just come in and start bashing heads. Pirate warfare was brutal. What about the pirate's other signature weapon? The flintlock pistol. Pistols were not extremely accurate at this time, and they took a long time to reload. So often they were a fire once at relatively close range. If you miss, you put it away, and now it's sword time. They were not very accurate. So what do you do if your gun is not very accurate? Make it less accurate. This is a blunderbuss, and it's basically the piratey version of a shotgun. You come over the side with one of those, whoever's in front of you is soup. And then rarely, but not so rarely that it never happened, hand cannons, which is exactly what it sounds like. If the Doom guy was a pirate, this is the BFG. Okay, so why were pirates such fearsome fighters? Why were they so confident in having such a little boat against such a big one? Because pirates fought like madmen. Merchants were just merchants. So, get boned. And naval vessels were often very regimented. They were firing when told to fire. Whereas pirate crews fought individually as one. They could go much faster, they could fight much harder because they weren't waiting on commands. The command was go. And every time you entered a battle, you were fighting for your life because you were either getting killed or you were getting captured and then hung. One naval officer mentioned that he surrendered because the pirates fired 6 cannonballs before he could even fire one. And he's like, screw that. That's crazy. So that was their whole shtick. Be scary as shit and then overwhelm with numbers. Anyone who wasn't killed was captured or taken hostage or assimilated into the crew. So you captured the ship. What's inside? Gold? Jewels? Silver? Not often. Yes, there were treasure galleons, big ones, with lots of guns and lots of escorts. Those were often really high-risk prizes that just weren't really worth it. Oftentimes pirates would go for merchant vessels containing like silk, spices, tobacco, that sort of thing. They would get rich by selling the goods when they get back to port. They would go somewhere like Nassau or Tortuga, which was a real place. So, what happens if you make the captain mad, or you've just been captured and you have some sort of vital information that the pirates might want? What could happen to you? Well, a lot of things. Pirates were really creative, but not so creative as naval officers. Naval officers had free reign over their ship. They could punish however they want. So they're the ones that came up with really deranged shit, like keel hauling. Basically, they would tie a rope to either end of you and drag you under the boat. That's horrifying. If you didn't die from drowning, you would die from being scraped apart by the barnacles or from sepsis and shock afterwards. I'm sure pirates did some keel hauling too, but that was actually invented by the Navy. Pirate punishments were pretty bad too, though. You could get lashes, which is just getting whipped. You could get tied to the mast, or put in a longboat and just left there for days. One torture method they like to use is they would take a wick, like a candle wick or a piece of string, and they would put them between your fingers, and they would tie your fingers closed, or they would do it to your toes, and then they would light the wicks on fire, and they would slowly burn between your fingers and toes, and I would talk. Or they would just throw you in the brig.
You're stealing, right to jail.
If you did something really bad, like stealing, you would get marooned. They would put you in a boat with a pistol and usually a bag of shot and powder, not just one, like they would give you a few, and then usually a couple days worth of food and supplies. And then they were just like, good luck, see you never. It was in fact one of these marooned sailors who was the inspiration for Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. They found him years after he'd been abandoned there, and he told his story to the author as they sailed home. Insane. Another one I just learned about called woolding. And basically you would take a cloth or a rope and you would tie it around Buddy's eyes. They would just pull and pull and pull until bad things happened. But generally, pirate captains were well respected by their crews, and they didn't want to do anything cruel or barbaric to jeopardize that. Except for this guy, who we will talk about. Alright, it's time to bust down some pirate myths. Did they really be talking like this?
It wouldn't surprise me none to hear you say, "Heave at the anchor, we sails on the hour."
No. This is Robert Newton. He's famous for his portrayal of Long John Silver in Treasure Island from the 1950s. He's originally from West County, England, and he just exaggerated his native accent, and that became the stereotypical pirate accent that we think of today when we hear pirate. Arr! Kind of like how Bela Lugosi used his real Romanian accent, and now that's what Dracula sounds like. I never drink wine. In fact, pirates had accents from all over the world, because pirates were from all over the world. So if most of your crew was like former Navy, they might all have English accents or Spanish accents. A lot of them had African accents. Like Africa is one accent. My point is, the accents they had were just wherever the person was from. So, very diverse. And I'm sure they spoke lots of different languages too. Take that, pirate language setting. Alright, what about these guys? Mugs. What about parrots? Did pirates really have parrots sitting on their shoulder all the time? Again, people are allowed to have pets. But keeping a bird on a boat is notoriously a difficult thing to do. That's why a bird landing on your boat as you get closer to shore is considered a good luck sign. Or shooting the bird is a bad thing. Read Rime of the Ancient Mariner, or listen to the Iron Maiden song. So some pirates would have pets, like parrots, or monkeys, or dogs. Most ships had a ship's cat, however, because rats in your food is not great. Those biscuits already get weevils, and you can deal with the weevils. Did all pirates wear eye patches to help them see under the deck? Not really. Some did. Oftentimes it was just to cover up a gross bloody eye scar. The whole going up and down between decks was probably not happening all that often. If you were below deck, you were below deck on the guns. If you were above deck, you were fighting. Okay, eye patches weren't really a thing. What about the earring? I've totally had this on the whole time. Gaslighting isn't real, you made it up.
gaslight me.
Gaslighting doesn't exist. You made it up because you're fucking crazy.
Pirates actually did wear golden earrings, or silver sometimes. The gold was used to pay for funeral rites if anything happened to the pirate. So kind of macabre, but also kind of badass. Sometimes they would stick balls of wax to the earring, and they would take the wax off and put it in their ear when they needed to use stuff like the cannons, which are loud because they're cannons. Girl pirates! I forgot to talk about girl pirates. I meant to mention that in the opening. There were girl pirates. Some of the most famous examples being Anne Bonny and Granuaile, Grace O'Malley. There was a really badass pirate queen who I'm saving for a special episode. She was really cool. So do we all remember the movie from the 90s, Hook? So in the movie Hook, one of the punishments that Captain Hook doles out to his crew members is they take the guy and they put him in a barrel. And then they cover the barrel and they fill it with scorpions. And they called it the Boo Box. And it was like, boo! Yeah, obviously that's terrifying. But like I said, keeping pets, especially ones like scorpions on a boat, are probably not likely. They did do something very similar though, and it's one of the strange punishments that I saved till now because I wanted to talk about it. It was called the sugar barrel. It's what it sounds. It's a barrel that used to have sugar in it. They would put you inside. They would close the barrel. They would cover it with a big blanket or a flag, and it would get really, really hot, and they would leave you in there for hours, or like I said before, days. So I would talk. Last thing I want to talk about, bam, the Jolly Roger. This design is often attributed to Jack Rackham or Calico Jack. We don't really know where this is a more stylized Hollywood version of the Jolly Roger. Lots of pirates had skull and crossbones and stuff like that. So we're not sure if we can really credit Calico Jack with coming up with it, but it's still cool. But pirate flags came in many different forms. They didn't all have skulls and crossbones on them. Some did. Some had the devil, or skeletons, or birds, and then like red, like bleeding hearts and stuff like that. Red was often associated with not giving any quarter. So if you could see a Jolly Roger with red on it, you knew you were probably in for a bad time.
Gonna have a bad time. My
favorite pirate flag is this one. This is the flag of Edward Teach, or Blackbeard, who I am going to do a whole episode on. I'm going to do a whole episode on a lot of pirates. And that's what I'm really excited for. This episode was an introduction about basics of pirate life. I am so excited moving forward because I've got just a list of pirates and privateers who I think are super cool and I want to talk about. My main issue is knowing who I want to do first, because I don't want to do the big heavy hitters right out of the gate. I think I'm going to do Thomas 2. And in the future, I definitely want to do maybe a few fictional pirates. I've got an idea for a Zelda-themed episode where I go through all the different pirates from the Zelda games. So I've got stuff coming, and I'm really excited to start this series and share my love of pirates with you guys at home. So please, if you want to learn more about pirates, if you just want to come hang out, smash like and subscribe. Leave a comment about which pirate you want to hear about first. Who's your favorite? Till then, stay safe till next time.